Long before motivational speakers filled stadiums or flooded social media, they pressed their ideas into vinyl. Tonight's record is one of those forgotten artifacts, a self-help sermon on wax from Paul J. Meyer.
Why enthusiasm?
Why enthusiasm? Why should you want to know all you can know, learn all you can learn about the power of enthusiasm? I'll tell you why. More than any other characteristic or trait of human personality, enthusiasm has been the companion of success in every achievement, every worthwhile venture, every upward step in the progress of mankind since the world began. Enthusiasm is that certain extra spark that makes you great. Enthusiasm is the inspiration that makes you wake up and live. Enthusiasm is the producer of confidence that cries to the world, "I've got what it takes," without you uttering a word to boast. Enthusiasm spreads like a prairie fire before the wind. It is the leaping lightning that blasts every obstacle from its path, that effectively communicates and helps you sell your ideas to others. Aristotle described enthusiasm in philosophical terms as the regenerative force of conviction. Victor Hugo said, "Enthusiasm is the fever of reason." In the scientific opinion of Louis Pasteur, enthusiasm is the contemplation of the inner God. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "Enthusiasm is the height of man, the passing from the human to the divine." And one psychologist defined enthusiasm as human energy. He says, "Any man who energizes below his normal maximum fails just so much to profit by his chances in life." In a recent interview, the president of one of the nation's largest transit corporations was asked what he considered the greatest single spur to success. Here is his reply. "The longer I live, the more certain I am that enthusiasm is the little recognized secret of success. The difference in actual skill, ability, and intelligence between those who succeed and those who fail is usually neither wide nor striking. But if two men are equally matched, the man who is enthusiastic will find the scales tipped in his favor. A man of second-rate ability with enthusiasm will generally outstrip the one of first-rate ability without enthusiasm. Believe in your work, love it, whether it's digging a ditch or directing a corporation. To an enthusiastic man, work is always part play, regardless of how hard or demanding it may be. A man in this frame of mind is powered with dynamite. He's headed for the stars. This enthusiasm, the magnetism of projected energy, can be caught by anyone. It's contagious. When you've mastered its generation and its control, you'll be amazed at the power you possess. This album traces to its source the wellspring of genuine enthusiasm and details the steps in the development, growth, and control of its powers of achievement. Now, by way of suggestion, you will not get the maximum benefit offered by this album if you merely listen to it at one time and put it aside in the usual way. Psychologists tell us that 62% of the acceptance of all ideas come after the sixth time they're presented. So a far better way is to listen and listen again and again, say once a day for at least 6 straight days. By this process of spaced repetition, you will absorb the deeper meanings and understanding of the power of enthusiasm into your subconscious mind, where it will continue to serve you every hour of every day for the rest of your life. But most important of all, through spaced repetition, you will motivate yourself to greater heights, to greater accomplishments, and to greater action.
The heart of enthusiasm.
One of the major reasons most of us know or understand so little about enthusiasm is that we frequently confuse it with something quite different. At football games, pep rallies, political conventions, even religious services, we often see a mass display of exuberance which we call enthusiasm. Call it mass hysteria, group hypnosis, or mob reaction in its milder forms, and I will agree. But enthusiasm it is not. At least, not by my definition, and the one we will deal with in this recording. The sort of temporary one-shot excitement that comes on such occasions as a result of group interaction and reaction is neither true nor lasting. Genuine enthusiasm is as enduring as any other of the finer traits of our nature: love, sincerity, courage, or faith. And like these qualities, enthusiasm is the outward reflection of a deep emotion that originates within yourself. When a man is imbued with strong conviction, he literally radiates the certainty of his emotion, and so it is with enthusiasm. It springs from the heart and is as difficult to hide as is great sorrow or abiding love. Another cause of the confusion that sometimes clouds our understanding of the nature of enthusiasm is that many of us are embarrassed to express it. We either try to force it by being flamboyant or suppress it by being sedate. In either case, the effectiveness, the real power of enthusiasm is lost. I am firmly convinced that the power of enthusiasm lies in its natural and unrestrained expression. For this reason, there are as many kinds of enthusiasm as there are kinds of people. To be effective, your enthusiasm must fit your personality. Every step of civilization's progress since the beginning of recorded history is the testimony to one man's conviction and enthusiasm. These have been the true giants among men, the great enthusiasts. And yet each displayed his enthusiasm in a different way, according to his own personality. Socrates, formulating philosophy quietly with a continuous flow of probing questions. St. Paul, burning with the fiery zeal and the power of a newfound truth. Copernicus, scorned and alone, testing his theories of astronomy. And Christopher Columbus, converting conjecture into certainty to discover new worlds. In philosophy, exploration, science, and education, the list of men on fire with personal conviction, with enthusiasm, if you please, is almost endless. Yet each was a different personality and displayed his enthusiasm in a different way. His power of enthusiasm was expressed in a manner determined by his own personality because it sprang from the heart.
The source of enthusiasm.
You may well ask, if enthusiasm comes from the heart, from within myself, how do I go about generating it? There are any number of answers from an equal number of experts, and most of them are wrong. Frank Bettger, one of the best-known salesmen in the world and often called Mr. Enthusiasm, reduced it to 5 words. To become enthusiastic, act enthusiastic. Elmer Letterman, an equally successful sales expert with an almost legendary reputation for enthusiasm, stresses another facet of the same solution. Elmer says, if you want to become an enthusiastic salesman, sell a product or service you can honestly be enthusiastic about. That statement, like Bettger's, is a true and valid maxim. Effective enthusiasm must be based on an honest opinion. Many people are cursed with mediocrity simply because they cannot, with simple honesty, become enthusiastic about their product or service. But there is a further word that needs to be said about each of these solutions. Bettger says to become enthusiastic, act enthusiastic. But many of us have been taught as children to contain our enthusiasm, to suppress it, to calm down and be quiet. Then as adults, through long habit of holding back, we become inhibited and try to hide our enthusiasm instead of expressing it naturally. Not many of us are Academy Award-winning actors, and that's about what it takes to act out an enthusiasm we do not feel. So acting is not the answer for us. That brings us to Elmer Letterman's statement. Sell a product or service you can honestly be enthusiastic about. If we do not already have a genuine enthusiasm, how do we go about getting it? Enthusiasm can be developed. Contrary to common opinion, people are not born with enthusiasm. It can and has been developed by the correct combination of 4 very common ingredients: curiosity, interest, knowledge, and belief. I say correct combination because they must be developed in that exact sequence and progression. Without knowledge, there is no genuine or lasting belief, only superstition. Without interest, no knowledge is gained and our mind simply will not absorb the facts. And without curiosity, we never develop an interest. So now we're ready to combine the answers of both Betcher and Letterman and say that to become enthusiastic, cultivate and develop this enthusiasm, then break your inhibitor and act out naturally that enthusiasm which you will honestly feel. If you do that, you will be expressing your interest in an idea or product about which you have knowledge and belief. That's what generates the power of enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm sells.
It has been said that the greatest faculty that all successful men have in common is their ability to ride the whirlwind and direct the storm. All of us encounter our own private whirlwinds, no matter where we live or what line of work we're in. And to a great extent, whether we ride or get caught up in our whirlwind depends on the degree to which we have developed our powers of enthusiasm, because enthusiasm sells. How does the power of enthusiasm sell? How do you make it work for you? The American psychologist William James answered those questions in the latter part of the 19th century with the announcement of a startling new theory. James noted that it had always been assumed that any given situation involving action provoked emotion, but James contended that the exact opposite was true. He used a simple illustration. Suppose, for example, you're a salesman. The theory had always been that 1. You're confronted with a difficult sales problem. 2. You use action to make the sale. 3. The result is a feeling of enthusiasm. According to James' theory, that continuity is in the wrong sequence. In reality, it happens like this. 1. You're confronted with a difficult sales problem. 2. You generate enthusiasm. 3. Enthusiasm stimulates action. 4. You make the sale. You aren't enthusiastic because you make the sale. You make the sale because you're enthusiastic. Enthusiasm is the human energy that blasts away any interference between you and success. On a recent visit to a large office building which housed a wide variety of business and professional people, I was impressed by a sign in the building's lobby. Displayed in a prominent position, the sign simply stated, "Everybody's a salesman." The basic truth of that idea can't be questioned. All of us are salesmen one way or the other. Without salesmanship and all that term implies, our present standard of living would cease to exist. In fact, would never have come about. A newborn infant sells his charm, his personality, his wants and needs with lusty cries and demonstrations of comfort and satisfaction. A young boy sells his dad on a weekend trip to a trout stream or hunting lodge. The young man sells his sweetheart on the advantages of spending her life sharing his dreams, future, and success. And in every successful marriage, the husband remembers to continue selling and reselling the wife on the happy choice she made. And on the other hand, the wife is selling too, every time she prepares a delicious meal or demonstrates her prowess as a superior homemaker. It is undeniably true, everybody's a salesman. How well we sell depends on our individual enthusiasm. So let me repeat what I pointed out on Band 3, that enthusiasm can be developed by the correct combination of curiosity, interest, knowledge, and belief, and in that order. And it is the combination of these 4 ingredients that generate enthusiasm that sells. Sells your product, your service, your personality, or your ideas. Enthusiasm sells because the prospective customer sees and shares in your interest, admires and covets your knowledge, and is caught up in the contagion of your belief in your product, your service, and yourself. In the bands that follow, we will discuss in depth how to develop these ingredients and the important part each plays in generating a contagious enthusiasm.
Interest, the first step to enthusiasm.
Most people will agree that the first step to enthusiasm is interest. Certainly, enthusiasm is much easier to generate when it concerns something we like, something in which we have an active interest. But is it possible to be enthusiastic about something we don't like and have no interest in? The answer is both a yes and a no. If you mean genuine enthusiasm, and if you're asking about right now, then the answer is an emphatic no. You cannot be genuinely enthusiastic about anything without being interested in that situation, cause, or project. And at this point, the disbelievers are ready to quit. They say, well, I can never be enthusiastic about my job, my company, my product or service, or my present situation because I've lost all interest in it. On rare occasions, I have advised some individuals to make a change, either of vocation or of location, because I felt they were in a place or in a field to which they were not really suited. But in a vast majority of cases, the change that is needed is one of attitude, not circumstance. Imagine the pandemonium that would exist if everyone who was not interested in his work or situation suddenly decided to make a change or seek greener pastures all at once. What is most startling, at least to those I have met, is that interest can be inspired, nurtured, cultivated, and developed. Somehow we get the idea that our interests are hereditary, that we are born with them in much the same manner as we are born with blue eyes and blonde hair. This is simply not true. Interests are a social development of man, a byproduct of our environment and experience, and like habits, they can be changed. How do you develop an interest in something you don't care anything about? I'll admit it does sound paradoxical and contradictory, but it can be done. However, it cannot be done unless there's a very good reason that you should develop such an interest. Without motivation, there is no purpose. Let's suppose that you are in a vocational situation in which you've lost interest, but you can't bring yourself to make a change of jobs because you can't afford to start over, or maybe you don't know anything you like better, or whatever the cause. You know you won't advance any higher than you are right now unless somehow you recapture your former interest and enthusiasm for your job. You have a good reason for developing an interest. That's motivation. And since you want to, you decide to do it. That's purpose. The rest is simple. Interest is nothing more than unsatisfied curiosity. Notice I said unsatisfied curiosity. And the reason you have lost interest in the first place is that you have satisfied your first wave of curiosity, and then you neglected to send out fresh troops. You quit asking questions. I'm assuming that you are not the world's foremost authority in your field. Now, if I'm right, and if you are not the top man in your field, then there must be some questions about your profession that you can't answer. What are they? Not the answers now, just the questions. What questions can you not answer? I don't really care what the questions are, but the fact that you can frame the questions will indicate you care. And the minute you begin to frame that set of questions, you have rediscovered interest. It's that simple. 1. Define your purpose and you create motivation. 2. Search for unsatisfied curiosity and you discover interest. That's the first step to developing the power of enthusiasm. The only thing that makes our job work is the attitude we develop toward it. By searching out the challenges and the possibilities that every job presents, it can be made just as interesting and exciting as your favorite hobby or recreation.
Knowledge, the second step to enthusiasm.
Just as interest is the product of man's social development, so knowledge is the product of his intellectual development and the second step in developing the power of enthusiasm. Although few of us are really thorough in our quest for knowledge, the pursuit of it never has been and never will be an insurmountable obstacle. No matter how much or how little formal education you have, you can acquire knowledge about anything if your interest is great enough. Ask questions, search for answers, pursue ideas. Look at facts in 100 different ways until you're sure of their meaning. Your age, health, position, or present economic situation have no bearing whatever on your ability to learn. If you want specific knowledge on any subject, search for it, find it, and then absorb it. So much for the question of how to acquire knowledge. You're probably more interested in the reasons why it's essential to enthusiasm. At least if you don't know, you should ask why. Knowledge is a vital ingredient of enthusiasm because it determines direction in developing the power of enthusiasm. It is never an acceptable end result, and yet the degree of enthusiasm, genuine enthusiasm you're able to sustain about your work or situation, is dependent in large measure on how much knowledge you have about it. Why? Because knowledge is your only protection against the assaults of doubts, fears, worries, and indecisions. And without knowledge, there is no real belief. Without knowledge, your enthusiasm dims at the first hint of weakness in your product or in your service. And as you encounter other suspicions, accusations, or vague references prompted by an overzealous competitor, your enthusiasm dies and interest is lost. So know all there is to know about your field. Know the structure, the content, the advantages, and the customer benefits of your product or service. Know them inside out, forwards and backwards, and know the whys that made them that way. Once you do, you'll find yourself on the threshold of belief, and that's the third step in developing the power of enthusiasm.
Belief, the third step to enthusiasm.
We have already agreed that interest is social and knowledge is intellectual. I hope you can also agree that belief is the product of our emotional development. I can already hear you saying to yourself, "I don't buy that. I believe a lot of things without any emotion whatsoever." But do you? Do you believe it or just accept it? Is what you call belief based on knowledge alone or knowledge that has been emotionally tested? Fact alone or fact plus feeling for the significance of the fact? Try this simple illustration. You have a factual knowledge that you cannot breathe underwater, but if you've ever tasted the fear that comes from near drowning, if you've ever felt your lungs almost bursting from lack of air and glimpsed the shadow of impending death hovering over your head, you believe. And that belief is so emotionally inspired that nobody is more enthusiastic about water safety than you. I submit that it's impossible to be enthusiastic without an emotional belief, without a knowledge of fact to which has been added a strong feeling of emotion. And it is this emotional belief that releases all of the stored up power of enthusiasm. Now let me assure you that your belief, like any other habit or skill, can be learned. You can acquire the technique or habit of emotional belief just as you acquire the ability to swim, to play chess, ride horseback, or read a book. None of us are born with belief in anything. We learn to believe in our families, our friends, our religion, our work, and above all, to believe emotionally in ourselves. In order to create genuine enthusiasm, we must combine a kindled interest and acquired knowledge with the emotional impact of sincere, unequivocal, and acquired belief. Each of these qualities supports the other. The more interest you generate, the more knowledge you gain. And the more knowledge you gain, the greater your emotional belief will be. Consequently, the more enthusiasm you'll reflect. There's no question that enthusiasm based on interest, knowledge, and belief is today and always has been the crucial difference between success and failure. Immanuel Kant, founder of modern philosophy, wrote his immortal essay, Eternal Peace, in the midst of international warfare because he believed in peace. Thomas Paine condensed his ideas on national freedom into a little pamphlet of 47 pages called Common Sense. The pamphlet exploded into action and became the clarion call of American independence because Paine believed. The indomitable Mary Wollstonecraft advocated women's suffrage in 1792. 125 years later, American women gained the right to vote. Mary Wollstonecraft's idea had spanned a continent, an ocean, and a century to emerge victorious because she believed. Thomas Edison knew the power of electricity. Belief gave him the dogged determination to persevere until he developed the incandescent electric light. Albert Einstein never saw an atom, but belief in the inexorable laws of physics gave him complete confidence in his theory about the atomic structure of all matter. Each of these people reflected an enthusiasm based on interest, knowledge, and belief.
Enthusiastic momentum.
Almost any person, when he sincerely cultivates belief, can generate enthusiasm for short periods of time. Then the fire of the power begins to fade. He has established enthusiasm, but it is not dependable. He lacks momentum. He's operating below a productive boiling point. Yet we all know that it takes but a single degree to turn water into steam. This same principle applies to selling a product, service, or an idea, inaugurating a plan, or creating a favorable impression. Too often we try to sell ourselves and our products without that extra degree of power that is achieved with boiling point enthusiasm. For the want of 1 degree of pressure, we fail to attain our goals because the enthusiasm we generate isn't consistent. Lacking momentum, it has no staying power. What's the answer? Let's go back to the definition of purpose, to the goals we first outlined as our motivation for developing enthusiasm. To sustain enthusiastic momentum, we must deliberately rebuild daily, and that rebuilding comes about through a constant review of the purpose we hope to achieve. Have that purpose always in the forefront of your attention. Write it down, burn it into your memory, make it an obsession. In the pages of the reference guide to the narration of this recording, you will find the $1 Million Personal Success Plan, which I have found so helpful in my career. It has been especially adapted to the development of enthusiasm. Make it your plan. Make belief in yourself and the maintenance of enthusiasm a separate goal in your personal success plan. Stimulate interest, acquire knowledge, cultivate belief, and strive for consistent enthusiasm. Their achievement will mean more of the good things in life, the fringe benefits for the man who lives enthusiastically. Enthusiastic momentum ensures a source of compulsive energy that never runs down and never wears out. It unlocks talents, abilities, and productivity sufficient to overcome any obstacle, any hindrance, and any roadblock. Enthusiasm can help you realize more of your full potential and share in the excitement, the zest, and the enjoyment of lasting success.
The power of enthusiasm.
When Emerson said, "Every great and commanding movement in the annals of the world is a triumph of enthusiasm," he was speaking not only of world history, but of the everyday events in the life of every man. Enthusiasm is the outward reflection of inner confidence. You can command every situation in your own life by taking each step with enthusiasm, the inner confidence that indicates belief in yourself and the things you represent. Enthusiasm isn't for sale. You can't buy it, but you can create it. And once created, enthusiasm is your greatest single source of productivity. Consider its power points. Enthusiasm is a knowledge indicator. It registers in letters 10 feet tall that you're completely familiar with an idea, a plan, your business, your profession, or the product you're selling. Enthusiasm produces energy. Just as every living plant through photosynthesis draws increasing energy from the sun, so can the brilliance of your own enthusiasm produce unlimited zeal and excitement. Enthusiasm is contagious. Self-projected enthusiasm is as much a part of your personality as your smile, your posture, or your hand clasp. No one can be exposed to its radiant force without being favorably affected. It can't be denied. Enthusiasm is power, unlimited power. But remember, the true enthusiast expresses his power naturally. It's as much a part of him as his hands, his smile, or his eyes. Doing whatever a job or profession demands may satisfy others, but the genuine enthusiast isn't satisfied unless he's doing what most people would call impossible. Accomplishing that task may require more skill and perseverance, but to a real enthusiast, it's just a normal way of life. All of us have seen examples of direct opposites in our business and personal lives. One person, talented and well-educated, holds back and allows another less gifted person to move ahead, win recognition and prestige. Why? The answer is that one man has developed enthusiasm while the other has ignored it. One man has an insatiable desire for knowledge. The other is satisfied with what he knows. One man is excited about his job and the possibilities it presents. The other is bored with his job. So practice the application of enthusiasm to every moment of your daily life, to your work, to your family, to your associates, and among your friends. Think, I can, I will. Assure yourself that you can do it, you will do it, because you believe in yourself and your own powers of accomplishment. Saturate yourself with confidence and belief. Fear and indecision can't possibly live in that kind of atmosphere. When such belief is firmly embedded in your consciousness, you will be a true enthusiast, a master of thoughts that breathe and words that burn. You will possess the infinite power of enthusiasm.